Yo, what is up guys, Ghost here, welcome back to the channel, and in this video, I want to bring you guys the ultimate guide to using the IFVs in Battlefield 6. So this is going to cover all of the in-game settings you need, the best loadouts, defensive tips, offensive tips, aiming, pretty much everything I can think of. I'm going to try and summarize it as best as I can in this one video, and hopefully you'll pick up a few tips along the way. As always, if you guys enjoy the content here, don't forget to hit that like button, hit the sub button to stay up to date with everything Battlefield 6, and as always, thank you guys for the support. So, in my opinion, the IFVs, or the infantry fighting vehicles, are probably the most powerful, most versatile vehicle that is available in Battlefield 6. They can kind of just do everything. They can do anti-air, they can do, of course, anti-infantry, and they can pack a punch against enemy armor as well. Now, before we get into anything else, the first thing you guys want to do is come into the options and find these two here. Vehicle aim relative controls you want to set to off, and decouple tank turret from aiming you want to turn on. And the reason for this is that this is going to allow you to aim your turret independently of which way your tank or your IFV is facing, and what that's going to allow you to do is drive in one direction and aim in another at the same time, which is really important for armor versus armor. Alright, let's now move on to loadouts, and you guys are actually going to have a few different options here. So it doesn't matter whether you're using the Bradley or you're using the STRF-09A4, as it's called here for the Pax Armata. So beginning with the primary weapons, we've got high explosive, we've got anti-personnel, which is kind of like a canister shot, and then we have armor piercing. Now, in my opinion, the two to watch here are definitely the high explosive one. I would say overall, they are the best round, and the reason is because of the splash damage against infantry. As you can see from this footage here, the armor piercing shells, they do not do any splash against infantry whatsoever, but they will actually one-shot infantry. Take no notice of the fact that it's taking 2 shots in this footage. It's because it's a test range, it's a portal server, and the damage numbers are kind of messed up because of that. But trust me, they can still one-shot people in the body in regular games. The high explosive rounds can do that as well, but they have a lot of splash damage, and the splash damage is actually quite generous there as well. Now, you may be wondering, what is the main difference? Well, of course, you're going to be doing more damage against vehicles if you take the armor piercing round, and specifically, of course, heavily armored vehicles like enemy IFVs and tanks. How much more damage are you going to be doing? Well, on my testing, it's about double, so it really is a big difference there. You can see in the front, I'm doing 28 damage with the armor piercing shells there, compared to the 14 of the high explosive, and then I'm doing 16 damage in the side here, instead of the 8 damage that the high explosive shells do as well. Now, if you guys haven't seen my engineer guide, where we go in depth into how armor plating works on these vehicles, the angle of attack, and all that sort of stuff, definitely go and check that one out. I'll link it down below in the description. But TLDR, basically, the angle that you hit enemy armor from, and also where you hit them, is going to matter. So you are going to do the most damage from behind, then in the side, and then the least damage from the front. And it's always best if you hit the armor perpendicular. Now, clearly, this is going to be very dependent on what sort of a game mode you're playing, and on what sort of map as well. If you're on Siege of Cairo, and there's, you know, lots of enemies in buildings, and you want to shoot them out of there, you can't always get a line of sight to body shot somebody, I would say, no-brainer, go with the high explosive rounds. But if you're playing something like Escalation on Operation Firestorm and Myrick Valley, and there's just tons and tons of enemy armor on those maps and those game modes, then I prefer to run armor piercing. So what about the anti-personnel canister round? Pretty much useless, in my opinion. It's basically like a really big shotgun, only it doesn't even do as much damage as the high explosive shell, and you actually have to hit the enemy with it. It's not really a whole lot of spread there, so I think DICE should probably like buff this. I mean, the other 2 shells already body shot people and one-shot them, so how can they possibly buff the canister round to be any better? I would just not touch this one at all. The one exception may be that it does a lot of damage against aircraft, but other than that, it's not very great. Moving on to secondary weapons then, we have the aim guided missile, aka the tow missile. This is a guided missile. It's going to follow wherever you are aiming. Really, probably the best weapon for the secondary slot here in the IFVs. You can kill and one-shot most aircraft with this. You can do a lot of damage to enemy armor as well, and some decent damage against infantry. Then we've got the light rockets. I would say these are okay, but they don't do as much damage as the tow missile. You also can't fire them one at a time. Like when you click and you unleash the salvo, it unleashes 2 rockets at a time, so you can't fire them independently of one another. And again, both of these rockets together still don't do as much damage to armor as the tow missile does, so I don't really see the point of using this one. And then finally you have the MR missile, the lock-on guided missile. Now this thing will do a ton of damage, more damage in fact than a tow missile to enemy armor, but obviously it comes with the massive caveat that you have to lock onto the target, and what that means is that whilst you're locking on, you're not doing anything else. The tow missile can be instantly fired, and then you can just switch to your main cannon and start racking up the damage. You can also, of course, lock onto enemy aircraft if they've been laser designated, so it does have its niche uses, but on the whole, I would still say that 100% the tow missile is the one you want to use almost all of the time. So for equipment slot 1, I like to use the emergency repair. What this does is if you're immobilized and you can't move, you're basically a sitting duck, you can hit this and your vehicle will spring back to life, it'll gain a little bit of HP and you can get out of dodge. Thermal blocking and smoke generator, these are really just for, you know, getting rid of enemy lock-ons. It doesn't really happen all too much if you're in an IFV. Yes, you can get hit by javelins and stuff like that, but you know, it's really kind of a minor problem. For equipment slot 2, we've got counterfire radar, which when you activate it, it's going to show you the position of anybody who's fired at you, so enemy engineers and stuff like that, or you've got the threat detector. Again, this is an active triggerable ability, and it's just going to highlight everyone on the minimap around the vehicle, a short radius around the vehicle for a short duration. I like counterfire radar because I just want to see who's actually targeting me, because those are the targets that you want to prioritize. Okay, for the next slot, I've got reinforced armor plating. This basically makes you take less damage from pretty much all damage sources, but it reduces the maximum speed and the acceleration. One of the main benefits of the IFV is it is quite speedy, and so I didn't used to like using reinforced plating, but I've actually grown to like it. I've gotten used to the slightly slower speed of the IFV, but it's still one of the faster ground vehicles anyway. So that's what I go with. The other options aren't really too hot. You know, vehicle maintenance, it basically allows you to recover health faster after taking damage, but you're going to be playing engineer anyway. Targeting jammer, again, just stops lock-ons from acquiring a lock as fast. And then systems upgrade just gives you faster cooldowns on your other abilities. So armor plating or reinforced plating, definitely the one for me. Now for the gunner, I would go with the light machine gun. Heavy machine gun is also a good choice, and in some niche maps, maybe again something like Siege of Cairo or Breakthrough, grenade launcher can be really, really good, but most of the time, if you just want to set it and forget it, I would say go with the light machine gun. That is the best one at the moment. Your gunner also has a secondary weapon here, the target designator, so he can laser designate targets, and of course, if you're using the lock-guided missile here, you can use those things in tandem. In fact, you can even solo it, so just know that. And then, of course, you have the smoke wall here for the second slot there. There's also this missile kill system, but for whatever reason, it is currently unavailable. Now, that's not the only setup that matters. Of course, your engineer setup matters a lot as well. So the main thing that you want to do is make sure that you take this one here, this tree called Combat Engineer, because this vehicle regeneration one is very powerful. Occupy a vehicle to start regenerating its health will activate if above its critical damage state. So those little white lines where basically if you drop below there, you can't heal any higher than that. As long as you're above that, which I think is at 33% health and 66% HP, then you're going to automatically heal. So of course you can always jump out with your repair torch and manually repair, but this is just a godsend, quite honestly. As for the gadgets, good old RPG, and then I like to take the supply crate. You can always pop that down on the ground and then resupply yourself with it. Alright, so with that said, let's jump into some gameplay. So to begin with here, let's talk about the best ways to actually aim in Battlefield 6 with the IFV, and for that matter, all ground vehicles. So you've got a few different options here, right? You've got first person, you've got third person, and then you've got the zoom view in first person as well. And what's interesting in this game is that you can just hit right click, or I assume press the right thumbstick on a controller, and it will zoom you in all the way from third person. And so for that reason, I tend to use the third person mode for driving around because you have the maximum field of view, you've got the maximum awareness, and then whenever I want to shoot a target, I just hit right click and I go into the zoomed mode. And the reason for that is because the turret turn speed is actually going to be slower than your mouse aiming speed, but with the zoom view, it's not quite, but almost 1-to-1 with your mouse sensitivity. And what this is going to allow you to do is flick between infantry targets and actually body shot people a lot easier. I just feel like the sensitivity in the regular first-person mode that's unzoomed just doesn't really work with me. And speaking of aiming, one of the big skills you're going to have to learn in the IFVs is how to use tow missiles. Now, luckily, tow missiles in Battlefield 6, for good or for worse, they are a lot easier to use. In fact, they're, quite frankly, child's play once you've practiced with them a little while. Basically, if you've never used one before, it is going to fly to the center of your screen or wherever you're aiming, and you're going to be able to do corrections. And because they have quite a slow flight speed, and they are very responsive in this game, you can take down enemy aircraft very, very easily. So basically, you just want to fire this in the direction of whatever vehicle you want to blow up, and once you've fired it, don't look at your crosshair, just look at the little yellow flying dot. It's quite hard sometimes to judge the distance and how far away it is, but as long as you keep it lined up on the helicopter or the jet, it should eventually come in contact with your target and you will get a kill. So this thing can actually one-shot jets, it can one-shot attack helicopters, not quite the transport heli, and it also does a bunch of damage against tanks as well, like I showed you guys earlier on in the test range. Now, it's not always super easy, right? A lot of the time, your target is going to be moving sporadically, so it's also about timing your shots. You want to be waiting until the target is at the right distance, and also until they are basically flying in a predictable manner. So wait until the jet is coming in for a strafe, you know he's going to slow down, you know he's going to be going towards the ground. If he's in the middle of a dogfight, unless you're absolutely cracked at towing targets, you probably just want to save your ammunition. Now, that's not to say you can't hit fancy shots, right? And if a target moves sporadically, you can try to correct, and that's where you're going to have to start to overcompensate with your crosshair. Similarly, if a target is very, very close to you when you hit it with a tow and it's moving across your screen, you're going to have to swipe your aim all the way past the target and then fire the tow because it comes from the right of the vehicle. So if you're firing towards the left, you've got to swipe left. And again, just look at the little yellow dot and use that to aim with. Ultimately, it comes down to be one of those skills that you just have to practice a lot to get good at. There are plenty of test ranges out there that you can do this in with, you know, flying targets, and you can just jump in an IFV and practice some shots. So I really, really recommend doing that. But honestly, it is very easy in this game. It shouldn't take you guys too long to get the hang of it. Now, your two main threats in this game aren't really going to be the aircraft. It's mainly going to be enemy engineers, because RPGs are very strong in this game, and it's also going to be enemy armor. And for that reason, it's very important that you don't overextend. I see tank drivers do this all the time. They go in way ahead of their infantry, they go on the flag, on the cap, and you will get surrounded from all sides by RPGs in no time. So you kind of got to read into where the enemy are, make sure that you've got range, because you have a lot of range in this thing, right? All of the cannons, they have very little drop, even at insane ranges, so make use of that. You know, feel free to pummel the enemy with the explosive shells, or if you're using the armor-piercing shells, try and line up a body hit. Also, don't forget you have your ability here that you can activate, which will show you where you're being attacked from. So if you get hit by an RPG and you don't know where it is, activate that ability, that RPG will show up on the minimap, and then you can kind of hunt him down. And of course, if you've got a gunner, you're going to be much more effective at doing that as well. Now, one of the most important defensive strategies is called pillaring, and basically it's just hiding behind cover and then coming out, taking a shot, and hiding behind cover again to minimize the amount of damage that you're incurring. So as a good example of this, let's say you're going up against an enemy tank or an IFV. The way you want to be firing your weapons is you want to fire your tow missile first, and then as soon as you fired it, unless your target is miles and miles away and you have to compensate for the drop by aiming above the target, because of course then the tow missile won't hit, you want to switch to your cannon, look straight at the vehicle so the tow still connects, but start pummeling him with the cannons. Now, by the time you've fired your 12 shots, your tow missile is not going to be off cooldown, so now you have a choice. You can either fire with your main cannon again once that's reloaded, or you can go behind cover and try to dodge whatever shot he's going to throw your way, and then once your tow missiles come off of cooldown, you dodge back out again from cover, hit him with the tow and the cannon combo. Obviously, that's just kind of like oversimplifying things, and it completely depends on the situation. How many targets are you engaging? Is it a tank? Is it an IFV? A lot of the time, you have to sort of get used to how quick enemy tanks fire at you. You know, what is the cadence of their shots? And sometimes good tankers will try and throw you off by not spamming it as quickly as they can, but rather waiting until they actually have a good shot. That's kind of how you anti-pillar, right? You want to wait until that tank comes out from behind cover, then fire your shot and hit it with it. Now, if the enemy armor in question has no idea that you're even there, it can be worth utilizing your speed, because you do have quite a lot of speed, especially when compared to the main battle tanks in this thing, to get behind the enemy tank, or at least from the side. And if you get yourself in that position, it's probably going to be a very easy fight for you to take. Don't forget, you've also got a speed boost that you can utilize for moments like that, or if you just want to get out of dodge and get across the battlefield quickly. Maybe you're taking a lot of heat, a lot of RPGs, sometimes you want to reverse real quick. That can really be useful there. And also, don't be afraid to jump out and repair. You know, if you've taken a lot of RPGs, go and get behind cover, jump out, and when you do jump out, be aware that whichever direction you're facing your cannon, that is where your soldier is going to appear. So if you want to go behind the IFV, turn your cannon to the rear and then jump out, and that way you're not going to get picked off by, you know, the enemy tank or a random RPG or something. A lot of the time, of course, you will find that teammates will repair you, and if they're doing that, or even better, if you've got somebody who's gunning for you and then they jump out and repair and jump back in and start gunning again, if they jump out to repair, don't speed away from them and leave them high and dry. First of all, because then you're not going to be getting any repairs. But second of all, it's just kind of a dick move, right? You're going to leave that guy out in the open. He's probably using the IFE as cover to repair you. And if you speed away from him, well, unfortunately, he's probably going to be seen and he's going to die. And also, don't forget that some of the best weapons of engineers are mines, not RPGs. So a lot of the time, it can be worth going off the beaten path, not sticking to the regular routes, because those are the areas that engineers are going to spam mines. Engies in this game can put down, I can't remember the exact number, I think it's something crazy, like 18 mines before they start to despawn. Even if the engineer dies, the mines persist. So you can have an ungodly amount of enemy mines on a map, and just be aware of that. Try and see them on the ground. You can, of course, shoot them with your main weapon if you do spot them, but I will admit, it is quite hard to see them, so a lot of the time, the best defense is just to stay off the main pathways. Now, as a final takeaway, if I had to give you guys one tip, probably the most important tip, I would summarize it by just saying, play conservatively. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Do not overextend. This goes for pretty much every vehicle in the game. Keep yourself topped off, right? If you've only lost 50% armor, don't tempt fate and go back out there for another go. Get behind cover, repair yourself. Because if you lose your IFV, you might not get one for the rest of the game. Like, if you're playing Breakthrough, for example, and you have an IFV that was at a spawn, and now the next sector, you've lost that IFV spawn, if you keep your IFV alive, you can have it for the rest of the game, as long as it's kept alive, right? So these vehicles are just super important. I see so many people just charging into battle as if they're meaningless for your team, but a really good IFV driver can make a massive difference in the outcome of the game. So I'm going to leave it there for this one, guys, because I don't want this video to get way longer than it already is. If you enjoyed it or found it informative, feel free to leave a like below. Don't forget to subscribe for more Battlefield 6 tutorials like this one, and I will see you guys in the next video.